It is now 26 minutes to 9 right here on Morning Express, and that's in Nairobi, Kenya. And thank you for joining us. Glad to host you right here on Morning Express. Well, it's time for us to look at lifestyle. And today we'd like to look at a social issue. And the social issue that we are highlighting today is based on the fact that the president realized that things are not good when it comes to drug abuse in Kenya. And he gave a directive. Remember, not too long ago, he also gave a directive regarding liquor and alcohol, that is second generation, for the dens to be destroyed and for that to be dealt with once and for all. Now, his words were alluding to the fact that the drug menace should be dealt in the same manner. Question is that the solution? But before we have that discussion, let's just remind ourselves of what the president had to say.
Kazi hii iongozwe na wanasiasa na wakifanya pamoja na security teams, kwa sababu viongozi ndio wanajua ni nani, wanajua ni wapi, and we want to eliminate all those dens. Nataka hiyo vita pia tuieneze na tuianze juu ya madawa ya kulevya. Na kazi hii vile tuliifanya na mambo ya pombe, tunataka tuifanye hivyo hivyo.
Now, before we continue and before I introduce the guest, that's what the president had to say. And let me mention at this point that I did speak to the chairman of NACADA, John Mutudo. He was not able to come to the studio. I spoke to the CEO for NACADA. He also was not able to come for personal reasons. I also spoke to the program director and also gave his apologies for not being able to come to the studio. We have also gone a step forward and tried to get them on phone just to talk to them and have this conversation, but for one reason or the other, they are not available. Okay? So we shall still have this discussion. The question we're asking this morning is this the solution, destroying the dens? We also spoke to Mr. and Mrs. Mwangi, who had confirmed they would be coming. Mr. and Mrs. Mwangi own a rehab center. They're also recovering drug addicts, but gave an apology at 3:25 this morning that they were not able to come. So with me in the studio, I have Judith Ogweno, who's a chaplain and a teacher at State House Girls, I believe. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And great to have you. And we shall continue the conversation despite the other two factions and the other areas that we had hoped to have in the studio, to have this as a wholesome conversation. But let me start with you as a chaplain and as one who is taking care of children, because one of the areas, according to the statistics given by NACADA, that is affected is the youth, and specifically in schools. How bad is it when it comes to drug abuse from your where you're seated?
Thank you, Mike. From where I'm seated, which is as a teacher in a high school, and also from the education sector, it's true that the youth are highly actually affected. I was looking at some research that was done in 2013, and they were looking at the alcohol and the drug menace in Kiambu and Nairobi counties. And the statistics showed that 48.9% of the people interviewed, over 1,500, had actually had alcohol at some part in their lives. So assuming if it was the whole nation of Kenya, or the whole population in the schools, 50% have actually tasted alcohol. Then there was also another level for the drugs, but the truth is it's a menace, and something needs to be done about it.
Okay. Is this the beginning point where the president has given a directive? We know how the alcohol was dealt with. We have leaders who actually came out in huge numbers to go and literally even bring down some of these alcohol dens. Do you think dealing with drugs can work in this manner?
Alcohol and drug abuse is complicated, but I'd like to commend the president. I don't know whether I'm worthy to commend the president, but kudos to what he has done as a starting point. I realized as I was thinking of what he has done, that it takes leaders who are courageous to start something moving in society. Everybody knows what's been going on in Kenya. All along it's been going on. But you see, when the president stood and spoke and said, we have to do something, people took action. To me, that implies then that leadership gives direction. So the fact that he has started us off on that, that alone will now translate into the other things we saw that came up immediately. He he told the people on the ground to start working on it. But I think that is a good starting point. When a leader has noted where there's a problem, talks about it. And I think many times I've been here, I always say, let us talk. When we start from talking, then action can actually be taken. So yes, I think it's a good starting point.
All right, and in case you'd like to participate in the conversation, remember you can do that via Twitter, and the Twitter handle is @MichaelG Gitonga. Maybe you also have suggestions as to how this can be dealt with. Possibly you could be a recovering drug addict and you have more info, having been on that path and knowing that maybe access is not the issue, and would be happy to hear from you. We'll also have our phone lines displayed, and Director, if we're able to get Mr. and Mrs. Mwangi, that would be great. If we can get them on phone, that would be fantastic, because they own a rehab center and they are both recovering addicts, and of course would give us a different idea to that. But coming back to you, Judith, and this is in regards to now the responsibility and the role of the parent in this. What do you think the parent, especially now for you who deals with children and in schools, what responsibility does the parent have to do with dealing with the menace?
The parents have a lot to do with it. When we look at the alcohol and drug menace, one person who is affected is the family, immediate family. Once the child has got into drugs, at some point the parent will become concerned, stressed out, and disturbed. So I think the first area that should be looked at is how the parents can come in right at the beginning when the issues start taking over. And again, as working with students, talking to them, and also reading, I come across the fact that most of the time, the parents realize when this thing has gone on, maybe even 4 years.
Right.
So there was a silence somewhere that everybody thought, the child is growing up, things are going on well, but the parent could have come in earlier and noted the changes that are significant when addiction or abuse is starting to take over from a child. So yes, the parents have a role to play, and a strong one, especially now that the society is getting destroyed, the society is becoming self-centered. The parents now have to come up again and start from there. And even if the schools were to come in and help, which we are doing, we have no choice. We are the second parents. And for some children, we are even the first parents that really work with them. We have to come in strongly. Yes.
What about access? Let's talk about access. And I remember an article I was reading not too long ago where some very young children were arrested by police. We're talking about children below 13. They were arrested by police for being drunk and disorderly. Now, when they went to the house where these children are having a party, they found liquor, which is spirits, really, which is, of course, not meant for children at all. So access to drugs, is that a problem that can be dealt with? Is there access to drugs in schools?
I wouldn't deny, because if there was no access to drugs in schools, we wouldn't have seen what we've seen on TV. We will not have seen that bus with the children.
Yes.
They must have accessed it. And they were in uniform. So at some point they accessed it. Yes, there is access. And the tragedy is that research is showing that children from as young as 7 years now are getting into drugs. And
7 years.
7 years, yes. And some are even starting to drink then. How then do children access? One, there is this famous saying, monkey see, monkey do. For children at that stage, what the adults do, they will copy. So if I take my children for an outing, whatever reason, we go and sit out somewhere, and there I am taking my drinks, and I am assuming the child is playing with the others. I am their model, whether I like it or not. So within that environment, already I am giving them this idea that, oh, there's nothing wrong with it. So the first access is the mind. It tells them you are actually able to reach that area. Then what happens? There are enough people, I think, who want to make money. I mean, it's a fact, who want to make money, and that's why the president was saying, even with their ships, if they continue, he will sink their vessels. Meaning there's a group out there whose main agenda is to make money, and millions are made from even little amount of those drugs. So the access is such that these people will use anybody they can find. If there's a student who is a weak link, then they can actually come in, get to the student. The teacher may not know unless another student who is close, or unless we see the signs that this is going on, to pay attention. Once upon a time outside Nairobi, we were just walking in certain schools and just trying to talk to the students. And one student who changed his mind about taking drugs told us that, you know, Mwalimu, when we come to school, most of you just frisk us and you check what you can see. But can you see that stone there? And there was actually a stone in front of us. And he says, you know, that is where our drugs are kept. People walk into the school for different reasons. Maybe they've come to visit. They leave it there. You may never know because maybe they came to pay fees. You never know. And then when everything is settled, when I go and I just kneel and pick, would you know I'm picking a drug? That's another way. I'm glad, on the other hand, that the government, I think, has made it a policy that there should be no kiosks around schools. Because when students would go to, pupils and students would go to buy lunch or something from the canteen, in exchange, it's another access point. So yes, it's very accessible. But I guess we'll talk about probably then, as people also contribute, how then do we stop this access point? Because yes, drugs are accessible.
Okay, let's talk about telltale signs, whereby I'm sure as a teacher you deal with so many children, and sometimes there are certain changes you may observe in a child that should draw attention to you as a teacher and the parent. What are some of those signs?
Okay, some of the signs that we find include a change, a behavior change in a student that was not there before. There are many causes that can cause behavior change. But we are saying when you notice these behavior changes, don't rule out. Consider all possibilities until you rule out one after another. One of them is a change in demeanor, I mean that the child now becomes careless. A child who was very well kempt and all that, all of a sudden hair is left. I'm not saying all hair that is not kempt.
It's not a direct indication that there is drug abuse yet.
Yes, but the hair is just left like that. The child always looked to be in a drowsy mood. Or they're in class, they're looking at you, and they're actually staring blank in space. Some of them, when you go to their rooms, they're actually becoming too cautious. There's the teenage issue of now privacy, but they're becoming so cautious, they don't want anybody to access their room. I think for the parents, that should be a sign that why is this child becoming too, too restrictive about the room being entered. Academic work also drops to a large extent because the brain, the drugs definitely affect the brain. And other signs could be the child maybe becomes low self-esteem, which could be a cause, but it can also cause the same, and many others that are things that we think are just
generally behavioral change.
Behavioral change, psychological change, and another one is money could start disappearing from the house. You leave your change on the table, you come, you don't find it, and for you, you might think maybe it's everybody else in the house except your trusted child. Unfortunately, it could be that child who must keep that habit, that keeps picking that money. Other things are, they start working with gangs, that you wonder, why does my child who was so well behaved working with this group that in your opinion look like rogues? There is a sign that probably this child has been co-opted and could even be the leader, but you might never know.
Do you ever have instances or issues where possibly as a school, and maybe this you speak for many teachers, you communicate with the parents that there's a problem here, but you have parents in denial?
Yes, those are instances that happen a lot. I would like to say that one of the things that we probably have done as a school is called what we refer to as Father's Day and Mother's Day. During these days, we sensitize parents. Now, from there is when I get to know. You know, when a parent comes and says, oh, I am so helpless, I don't know what to do about this situation, then you realize all along, probably they didn't even want to accept it. And for anything that happens in our lives, majority of times, any tragic thing or shocking thing, the first stage is denial. So yes, some parents would deny and say, that cannot happen. My child, mommy is always like this, daddy is always like this. But the reality hits when they see a major change of behavior. So yes, denial is there. There are other parents who are who are very open. And they're like, I've noticed the change in my child. I'm glad you brought it out. So I cannot say totally they deny, But that does happen.
Okay, and there's also the issue of discipline, because we know that several measures were put in place to ensure that students are not molested in the name of discipline in schools. Do you think this has affected where we are today in terms of students now having access and teachers feeling they have nothing they can do to even discipline this child, yet you have been given the mandate of the parent when the child is with you?
What was removed from our school basically was corporal punishment, and kind of punishment that encouraged torture, and you know, the one that demeaned the student. But still left to us, there are other avenues. And because of the changes that we are having, I think one of the key things that if we are going to probably bring our discipline back to strengthen parenting and then to have information out. Much of, you know, when I was reading about what Kenya is doing about drugs and all that, there's not so, there's material, yes, but the one that you can really trust was not that easily accessible. So I think as we are dealing away or doing away with the corporal that we all relied on, there are other avenues that we can still...
most of us to where we are today.
Yeah, right. And that's debatable because it's within the law right now. But I know that, yes, this has been removed. So do we now die and say it was removed, let's just put our hands down, we are completely paralyzed? No, 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 no. We can still talk to these children. We can still apply other measures of discipline, preventive discipline, plus the other one after they've done what they are doing, that will help them realize that something is wrong with their lives. One of the ways I've noticed that it's a measure that is very interesting, but sometimes we apply it. When a student makes a mistake, you tell them, sit down there, take these pieces of paper, just write about your life. I've had a few students, and they're not necessarily those involved in drugs, who will come and say 1 year later or even 3 months later, you know, Mwalimu, the day you put me there to write about that composition, something happened to me. Sometimes you just tell them, look at creation, look at the moon. I want you to write something about your life that makes you see that creation is operating so well. Why aren't you operating well? Do you know, Mike, from such kind of things, I have seen students reform. So am I going to say we introduce that the law is taking care of? But I still think we are not giving up. There are other ways we can talk. Guidance and counseling needs to be strengthened. What I see on the ground is we keep saying we have guidance and counseling, but how many teachers are trained in guidance and counseling? Is it just theoretical? When real guidance and counseling is in place, majority of children we are able to help them. When we are in touch with the psychologists, the clinical psychologists, the NACADA, which is not here, but I hope they would have in any way, I mean in a way, come to tell us where are their centers. All that put in place, I think and I believe strongly, something can be done.
Okay. And do parents maybe need to go for refresher courses on parenting, really, because they're so busy trying to make ends meet for these children, yet losing their children again because of the same inavailability?
Yes. The interesting thing is there's no manual for parenting. Every child comes as a package
with special
special needs and instructions. And probably unless we go back to the creator, all said and done, my thought, as I've been looking at this whole issue, is now that not all parents can go to churches or mosques because they are very busy, why can't schools strengthen not necessarily the Parents-Teachers Association as in a situation where you only have, we come and look at the monies, how our school is run, and we look at the AGM. Why don't they have sessions where they now do parental training?
Do you do this in your school, for example?
We have started. We've done it since 2010. We've had a few sessions, and amazingly, one time we had it, and we had over 500 male, that is fathers and guardians, come in. At first they were wondering, why did you call us here? But when they saw what happened, when we invited the mothers, some fathers came and spent the whole day seated in a car waiting for for the mother to go and just listen to what the speaker has to say. What I've seen is parents are hungering to know. Even yesterday I was talking to a parent and she was like, I really want to know what to do with my child. Who will teach me? So schools are an opportunity right now that can actually bring in parents, not necessarily for fees and all that, but have discussions where we sit and we talk about even marriage issues, a safe forum, because there's nothing that you will say.
And generally build on the family. I want us to take a call. We have somebody who's calling. Alfred. Good morning, Alfred. Alfred? Do we still have Alfred? I think we've lost that call. Sorry, you were saying that, yes. I was going to ask, why is it that you separate the fathers and the mothers when you're doing the training? Or is it a specific...
No. That was the first time we did it. But at some point, we brought the two gender together. I think why we separated them specifically was we wanted to talk about fatherhood. We wanted the fathers to be in their environment. And when we organized, I remember some fathers asking, why are you here? We said, unfortunately, we are the organizers. We have to sit in here. But I recall one specific parent who came and said, since we had this forum, my relationship with my daughter has changed. And I would see him walk in and talk to teachers. I'm not saying it's all rosy when we do that, but at least we're able to help. It's a starting point. Yes, so they can put them together, and depending on what they want to discuss. And I recall a few parents are still asking, can't we even go further and now deal with, specific issues? We've dealt with issues of the media and all that. So what am I saying in short? That there's an opportunity that is open. In as much as we have so much work that we also have to take our time to organize that, there's a chance that is open there for parents.
Okay. And drugs are fairly expensive. Where do children get the money to spend on drugs?
What I've realized is that the first few moments that the child comes into touch or in contact with drugs, most times it's the people who traffic who will give. Because they know that once that child reaches the high, they will do anything to get that money. So some children come from well-to-do families. They will probably be used to get the other ones from the lower, from the middle families, or what we call less advantaged families. And because the need for the drug is so strong in the body, I tell you, Mike, the child will do anything to get that money. They can steal pocket money from another child. They can rob their own parents. They can get in touch with and especially this trend that is coming up at higher levels past secondary school, where there's this big man or this woman who is taking care of this young child. They will try to meet that need and give them excess money, of which there's no accountability.
There's no accountability, and of course it may end up in drugs. We have Jared from Narok. Good morning, Jared.
Morning to you.
Yes, Jared.
Yeah, I was saying that about the debate. Morning to you.
Yes, go right ahead, Jared.
Okay, I was saying that. A minute, please.
Jared, we can hear you. Go ahead. What you have to say?
Hello?
Yes, Jared, we can hear you. Go right ahead.
Okay. I was saying that there is something wrong with the rules that have been put in place.
In school? Or where?
Yeah, for one. For one, they are gone against the Bible, because even the Bible itself says that if you put away the
rod,
cane,
spare the rod and spoil the child.
You are spoiling the child.
Okay.
Two, we need to take these stakeholders, parents and teachers. Then we involve the government. I mean, the government should involve those areas.
Okay.
In that we can come up with good strategies of raising up these small kids.
All right.
Because if we cannot show them the right way when they are small, I mean young, when they go to high schools, we have several groups. These groups may corrupt them, which may ruin their lives.
All right.
Yeah, so the issue is that let us give these children a good background.
Okay.
That by disciplining them, though some corporal punishments were bad, but not really putting away the cane, and the child feeling that is above the teacher.
All right, Bramwell, I'll have to cut you short because we are running out of time. Thank you for your call, Bramwell. We appreciate. And coming back to you, Judith, as we wind up and maybe as we hear your closing comments, what role do you feel the government should play in this regard? Because I think it's something that needs to be taken up by everybody. It's not just the parents, it's not just the teachers, it's not just the government, but what role should the government play in this particular exercise?
Okay. One, the fact that the president has taken an initiative, that should be the beginning. Then, looking at what happened to some of those people who are involved in alcohol, I think immediately we start raiding the dens, they should put in place strong rehabilitation centers so that people do not die from the withdrawal symptoms, because the withdrawal symptoms in themselves are dangerous when somebody is just forced to leave the drugs just like that. So we need institutions that are affordable put in place. I was trying to look at what institutions we can access. First, they are not anywhere displayed in our schools, so that even if I had an issue, I would
you know where to go.
I would know where to go.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. We'll have to wind it up right there.
Okay.
The director tells me that we are well out of time. And Judith Ogweno, chaplain and a teacher at State House Girls, thank you for joining us this morning. This is where we wind up Morning Express this morning. I'll take this opportunity to thank you all for joining us this wonderful and great day. For those of us on KTN News, stand by for the 9 o'clock bulletin. Those of us at KTN Home, have yourselves a great day. Do stay with us and enjoy the rest of your viewing. Good morning.